Have you ever woken up to a strange morning? You open your eyes, and everything feels familiar. The ceiling, the alarm clock, the soft light coming through the curtains, even the faint smell of coffee from the kitchen. But something feels different. A sense of emptiness creeps in. Not exactly sadness, not quite joy, but a heavy stillness clinging to every breath. You look around the room, once your safe space, and suddenly it feels more like a stage than your own place. In that moment, you feel strangely distant from your own life. And then a question arises, quiet yet haunting. Whose life am I living? The answer seems obvious. Of course, it's your life. You made the choices, worked hard, and pushed forward to get here. But if you look closer, where did those choices really come from? From the depths of your own heart, or from the expectations, pressures, and fears the world placed upon you? How many of your decisions were already decided for you? Like what school to attend, what career to pursue, what kind of job to get for stability, how to behave to be seen as proper? How many beliefs have you carried without ever questioning whether you truly believe them or simply because everyone else does? How many times have you hidden your real feelings just to avoid letting someone down? You think you're living your own life, but if you pay attention, you'll see each step has been guided by an invisible hand. You say what you've been taught to say. You behave the way others expect. You nod when you really want to shake your head. You smile while a part of you is silently crying. And in each of those moments, you feel the growing distance between who you truly are and the role you've been playing. People call it a normal life. You go to school, get a job, fall in love, get married, buy a house, raise kids, pay the bills, retire. A familiar cycle that everyone seems to follow. But inside that normal life is a quiet unease, a whisper like the wind. This can't be all there is. You hear it when you're lying alone at night, when you leave your desk at the end of the day, when you see the tired smile in your own reflection. That day, in your familiar room, you realize something terrifying. You have never truly lived as yourself. Every action carries the shadow of expectation. Be successful so you won't be looked down on. Don't embarrass your family. Be polite. Don't be too sensitive. Don't dream too big. And so you gather up all the advice, all the judgments, all the fears of being left behind, and you build them into a mask. That mask is polished and beautiful. It earns you praise, acceptance, and makes you seem like someone who has it all together. But it grows heavier with time, pressing down on the real face beneath it. Do you remember, as a child, when you painted a wild and colorful picture, and someone said no, that's not how it's supposed to look? When you sang freely but were told to be quiet? When you cried and heard stop it, you're too old for tears? And slowly, moment by moment, you learned to hide yourself. You hid your creativity, your innocent joy, even your sorrow that needed to be heard. Over time, what remained was a version of you that fits the world, but not yourself. You've lived that way for so long, you started to believe it's who you really are. But today, when the emptiness speaks, you begin to see that there's a part of you that's been left behind. It's like a room inside your soul that you've never entered. It's not loud. It's not in a rush. It's simply waiting patiently for you to return. And you start to wonder, what does it truly mean to find yourself? Is it just knowing what you like, what you dislike, what you want? Number. It goes deeper. Finding yourself isn't about building a new image. It's about peeling away the layers of the mask until you touch what's always been there. It's hard to accept that most of your life has been a performance. But the moment you see it, a door begins to open. Because if this life hasn't been fully yours, then you still have a chance to reclaim it. A voice rises within you, soft but clear. Life really does not begin until you find yourself. And that voice is like a small flame, lighting up the emptiness you just discovered. Finding yourself is not easy. It begins with asking the hard questions, with admitting that the mask you wear is not the full truth. It starts when you stop trying to fill the void with work, social media, or shallow relationships. It demands the courage to sit in silence, to listen to the whisper deep within you that you've been avoiding. And sometimes, the most painful moments are the very beginning of healing. Imagine standing at a fork in the road. One path is wide and smooth, well paved, with clear destinations. Everyone knows it. Everyone walks it. It's safe, predictable, but repetitive. The other path is narrower, covered in mist, and no one knows where it leads. Yet something inside you longs to step into that fog. The journey to find yourself is the misty path. There's no map, no guide, just you and the quiet calling from within. That morning, in your familiar room, you finally understand. The life you've been living is not truly yours, but in that very moment of realization, the door to your real life opens slightly. You haven't walked through yet, but you've seen it. And that glimpse, that awareness, is the beginning of everything. So what has held you back for so long? What has turned you into an actor in an invisible play? To walk through that door, you must first understand the invisible threads of society, family, and even yourself. The threads that have woven the mask you've come to call me. There's something almost everyone forgets. From the moment we are born, we step into a world already prepared for us. We are given a name, a surname, a nationality. We are assigned a role. The good daughter, the strong little boy, the family's hope. It all begins with whispers over the cradle, pats on the back, and expectant eyes. Slowly, we learn to live according to those definitions, until we start to believe that they are our true selves. As children, we are like blank sheets of paper. We cry loudly when we're sad, laugh uncontrollably when we're happy, draw whatever our imagination brings to life. But the world around us doesn't accept all of that. Boys don't cry. Girls should be gentle and know how to give in. You can't survive by dreaming. These small phrases, repeated over and over, become molds we gradually squeeze ourselves into. And then we begin to understand there are parts of us that are not accepted, not allowed to see the light. Do you remember that feeling? When you said something with honesty and people laughed or frowned. When you wanted to do something different, but were told to be realistic. When you expressed a strong emotion, but were told not to overreact. In moments like those, you learned a quiet lesson. To be loved, to be accepted, you had to shrink yourself, to cut away the parts that didn't fit the mold. Society is clever. It doesn't need chains to bind you. It only needs to plant small rewards and punishments. A smile of praise when you're obedient. A disappointed shake of the head when you're too different. Slowly, you build a frame for yourself. You learn what earns applause and what gets rejected. And so, you choose the applause. You choose to become the version people like. That's when the mask begins to form. Jung called it the persona, the face we show the world to survive. The persona helps us adapt, helps us belong, helps us find jobs, friendships, and love. It's not necessarily bad. In fact, without it, it's hard to exist in a world full of rules. But the problem is, over time, we forget that it's just a mask. We become so attached to it that we believe it is who we are. Does this feel familiar? You become the model employee, always ready to meet expectations. Even when deep down you want to scream that you're exhausted. You become the good friend, always listening and supporting, but rarely brave enough to admit you're also vulnerable and in need of care. You become the dutiful child, nodding at every family decision, while a quiet part of you longs to choose a different path. And so, layer after layer, the masks pile up. You wear them so often that sometimes, even when you're alone, you no longer know what your real face looks like. Some may ask, if the persona makes life easier, why worry about it? The real issue isn't that you wear a mask. It's that you forget you're wearing it. When you fully identify with the persona, you drift away from your true self. You chase approval from the outside and lose touch with the voice inside. You believe that safety and applause will bring happiness, but instead, you feel increasingly empty. Think back to the last time you did something just to please others. Maybe it was choosing a stable career over your passion. Maybe it was staying in a relationship just to avoid judgment. Maybe it was staying silent in the face of injustice, afraid to be cast out. In that moment, did you feel a crack inside? A small voice whispering, "This isn't me." But then you silenced it, because the fear of being left behind was too great. These invisible strings are the scariest. They don't show up clearly, so you can't fight them head on. They slip into a parent's glance, a teacher's advice, society's standards, a mirror of comparison. They tell you to succeed, but don't let you define success on your own terms. They tell you to love, but not to choose whom to love. They tell you to be happy, but define happiness by the crowd's standards. And so you grow up in a golden cage, believing you are free, while every step is quietly directed. But deep down, a part of you knows this isn't everything. That's why, even with a career, with status, with a family, so many people still feel a sense of lack. They can't name it. They just know something's off. It's not because they are greedy or ungrateful. It's because their true self is knocking, asking to be seen. One day, maybe while you're stuck in traffic, or looking at yourself in the mirror, or lying awake in the middle of the night, an old question returns. Am I truly living? That question is the first crack in the persona. It's not here to destroy you, but to wake you up. The persona is necessary for survival, but it's not enough for life. It's like a coat you wear when going outside. It keeps you warm and presentable. But if you forget the body inside, you'll live wrapped in fabric, never touching your own skin, your breath, or the real beat of your heart. So the question is not, should we remove the persona entirely? The question is, are you willing to look beyond the mask to discover who you truly are? Only when you see that the persona is just a part of you, not the whole, can you begin the journey back to yourself. And this is only the beginning. Because beyond the mask lies something even more dangerous and mysterious, a part of you that you have suppressed, denied, and avoided your whole life. A part that never disappears, but lives in the shadows, waiting to surface through your actions, your dreams, even your relationships. That part is the shadow. And only when you dare to face the darkness can you truly step into the light. If the persona is the mask you wear to face the world, then its opposite is the dark space you constantly try to hide. That space is known as the shadow. It's not something distant or foreign. On the contrary, it is made up of the parts of yourself you rejected while growing up. Every time society said, "This is wrong, that is not okay, you shouldn't be like that," you tucked away another piece of yourself into the darkness. Over time, a hidden world formed, one that holds your suppressed emotions, unspoken desires, unhealed wounds, and even untapped potential. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you deny it. It stays there, patient and persistent. You may believe you've got it under control, but in truth, it's always looking for a way to express itself, often at the most unexpected moments. A sudden outburst of anger, a burning jealousy, a strong dislike for someone over something small. All of these could be the voice of the shadow. It doesn't speak in logical language. It speaks through instinctive reactions and powerful emotions that leave you confused about who you really are. Have you ever disliked someone the moment you met them, without knowing why? Maybe they didn't do anything wrong. They might even be kind. But something in their tone, their eyes, their behavior just irritates you. What's really happening? This could be a projection, meaning the traits you rejected in yourself are being reflected back to you through others, and you react strongly to them. In other words, you're not just seeing them, you're seeing your own darkness mirrored through them. Take, for example, a man who was taught that men must never show weakness. He suppresses his sensitivity and need for care. But those emotions don't vanish. They move into the shadow. As he grows up, every time he sees someone display vulnerability, he feels angry or scornful. In reality, he's not upset with the other person. He's reacting to the part of himself he was forced to abandon. Or a woman who is constantly praised for being gentle and self-sacrificing. She learns to suppress her assertiveness and her desire to take charge of her life. Her shadow holds that unacknowledged strength. So when she encounters women who speak their minds and make bold decisions, she may feel irritated, even judge them as selfish. But deep down, she's reacting to a part of herself that was never allowed to come forward. Strangely, the shadow doesn't only hold negative qualities. It can also hide strengths and gifts we've never allowed ourselves to see. A child once told to stop daydreaming might have buried a deep creative talent in the darkness. A person mocked for being too sensitive may have suppressed a powerful intuition. What we reject, we stop being aware of, but it doesn't vanish. And if brought into the light, it can become a surprising source of strength. The challenge is, most of us choose to look away. We avoid the truth that the shadow is guiding us from within. We blame others for making us angry. We criticize the world for being unfair, without ever asking, what is this reaction really telling me about myself? Facing our own darkness takes courage. It's like looking in a mirror inside a dimly lit room. You see the wrinkles, the scars, the parts you'd rather not admit belong to you. But Jung once said, the shadow is not our enemy. It is an essential part of becoming whole. Because when you face it, when you pull it out of hiding and say, this too is part of me, it begins to lose its invisible power. Instead of secretly controlling you, it becomes a source of energy you can integrate and transform. Imagine this. If you admit your weakness, you no longer have to constantly prove how strong you are. If you acknowledge your jealousy, You can turn it into motivation instead of letting it tear you apart. If you accept your sensitivity, you'll discover it's not a burden, but a deep capacity for empathy. The shadow, once integrated, becomes light, but that journey is not easy. It requires the courage to sit in silence and listen to the uncomfortable voices inside. It demands that you take responsibility for your reactions instead of blaming the world. It asks you to accept that you are not just a good person, a kind person, a successful person, but someone full of contradictions, edges, light, and dark. And it's exactly those contradictions that make you whole. You may wonder, if the shadow is so dangerous, why do we even need it? Because without darkness, there can be no light. The shadow shows you your limits. It helps you recognize wounds so you can heal them. It leads you to the parts of yourself that you've forgotten. It is a strict but honest teacher, showing you who you really are behind every mask. And that's why the journey of self-discovery doesn't end with removing the persona. Because even when you take off the outer shell, the shadow will still pull you back, unless you're brave enough to face it. Only when you step into the darkness can you find your true power and become the fullest version of yourself. But the big question remains, how do you face the shadow without being consumed by it? How do you turn it into an ally instead of an enemy? The answer lies in the next step of the journey. The process of integration, where you learn to walk straight into the dark, keep your eyes wide open, and realize the light has been waiting there all along. Once the mask of the persona has taken shape, once the shadow begins to whisper, there is no turning back. A door has opened, and even if you try to ignore it, you will always feel its presence, waiting for you to step through. But walking through that door is not like changing a job, moving houses, or ending a relationship. It is something entirely different, a journey inward. And the hardest part is facing the truth that you may have never truly known who you are. Most of us think we know ourselves. We say, I'm an introvert, I like art, I hate dishonesty, I'm the strong type. These labels sound clear, but if you look closely, you'll see they're only surface level. They're like signs hanging outside a door, while the room inside still holds corners you've never explored. A name, a profession, a few memories. These are only fragments of a much deeper and more complex being. You may ask, then where is the rest of me? The answer lies in the depths of your unconscious. In that space lie forgotten memories, denied emotions, unnamed desires, and most importantly, a potential that has never been lived. It could be a talent you once stumbled upon but left behind. It could be a different personality you once tried to express but were told to silence. It could be a longing for a life completely different from the one you're living now. Yet stepping into this journey of self-confrontation is never easy, because the first thing it asks of you is silence. You will have to sit alone, without the noise of work, without the distraction of screens, without the chatter that fills the emptiness. You'll have to sit with your own thoughts, and that is often more frightening than anything else. Because in silence, you hear the voice you've been avoiding. It speaks of your failures, your fears, your buried desires. It is not pleasant, but it is real. We often run away in every way we can. We overwork, dive into unfulfilling relationships, scroll endlessly through social media, pack our schedules with entertainment, all to avoid hearing the inner call. But the truth is, the more you avoid it, the louder the shadow becomes, and the deeper the emptiness grows. It's no coincidence that many people, despite success and abundance, still feel lost. What they lack is not material, it's connection to themselves. Facing your true self is not a romantic decision. It is a battle against your own habits, the habit of avoidance, the habit of distraction, the habit of clinging to outdated identities. It's like stepping onto a dark road, with no signposts, guided only by your intuition. But in that darkness, you begin to see the real shapes of who you are. For example, you might realize how much the fear of rejection has shaped your life. You chose a job not because you loved it, but because it was socially respected. You stayed silent in conversations, afraid your opinions would be dismissed. You avoided new experiences, worried you would fail. Then you begin to see that these fears don't come from the present, but from old wounds, maybe from being teased by friends, or from the disappointed gaze of a parent. Those memories don't disappear. They become threads pulling you towards safety, but also trapping you in an invisible cage. Facing these truths is difficult, but it's also where freedom begins. When you realize what you're afraid of, you can choose to confront it instead of running. When you dare to name the pain, it loses its power. It's like facing a nightmare. Only when you wake up and meet it head-on do you realize it's not as terrifying as it seemed. But this journey is not only about fear. It's also about rediscovering the beautiful parts of you that were forgotten. Maybe you once loved writing, but gave it up after being told it was impractical. Maybe you adored music, but put it aside in pursuit of stability. Maybe you dreamed of exploring the world, but stayed back out of duty. When you dare to confront yourself, you don't just meet pain, you meet joy that had been left behind. Here is the deeper truth. Facing yourself is not about creating a new person. It's about reconnecting with the parts of you that have always been there. It's like walking through a dark house, and each door you open leads to a room that feels both strange and familiar, filled with memories, emotions, and potential still waiting. And with every door you unlock, you feel a little lighter, a little freer, as if another chain has fallen away. This journey has a name: individuation. The process of becoming who you truly are, not by adding more, but by integrating all that already belongs to you. It is not fast. It is not easy. Some days you'll feel like you're moving forward. Other days it may feel like you've fallen back into a deep hole. But that is the nature of the process. Like climbing a mountain, there are moments to pause, moments to retrace your steps. What matters is not the speed, but that you keep going. And then, when you begin to hear your inner voice, when you stop running and start listening, you'll start to notice signs appearing all around you. Maybe in a strange dream, you see a symbol that reflects something you'd forgotten. Maybe in an ordinary moment, you find yourself doing something that brings a joy you haven't felt in years. Maybe in a conversation, your heart stirs at a simple phrase. These are signals from within, guiding you closer to your true self. But remember, facing yourself is not only about looking at what is easy to accept. It's also about daring to see your darkest parts, your envy, your selfishness, your weakness, your anger, everything you didn't want to admit. You must be brave enough to say, "This too is me." Because only by accepting the darkness can you truly find the light. This is not a journey with a final destination. It is a lifelong path. But with every step you take, every time you dare to be a little more honest, life becomes a little lighter. You no longer need to cling so tightly to the mask. You no longer have to fight the shadow so fiercely. You begin to live instead of just performing. And when you take those first steps, you'll discover something beautiful. You are not alone. Because deep within every human being, there are ancient blueprints, invisible streams that connect us all. We call them archetypes, and they will rise to meet you, to guide you on the path toward your true self. There is a simple truth that few dare to accept. You cannot heal what you are still running from, just like you can't escape a dark room by closing your eyes and pretending the light is already there. To find your way out, you have to open your eyes, even if the darkness makes you shiver. The journey of facing yourself is the same. Once you recognize the persona and the shadow, you are faced with a choice: to continue living as before, wearing the mask and letting the shadow quietly pull the strings, or to embark on the deepest conversation you'll ever have, with yourself. And that choice will shape the rest of your life. Identifying the shadow is not like glancing in a mirror and being done with it. It's more like opening old journals you had hidden away, reading words you once feared to see again. You'll uncover childhood wounds, small memories you thought were long forgotten. Like the moment your classmates laughed at you and you learned to stay quiet. Like when your parents said you weren't good enough and you threw yourself into achievements. These fragments of memory became the roots of your later behaviors. And only when you face them can you see how deeply they've shaped you. For instance, someone who fears rejection might realize that fear began on a childhood afternoon, when he showed his parents a drawing and received nothing but a cold frown. That wound seemed small, but it became the seed of a lifelong run from judgment. When he finally sees its origin, he can look the inner child in the eyes and say, "It's okay. That drawing was beautiful. You weren't wrong." And in that moment, a part of the soul is returned. Liberation doesn't come from denying the shadow, but from embracing it. Because the shadow becomes dangerous only when you lock it in the dungeon. When you shine light on it, you see that it carries gifts. The sensitive one who was mocked for being too emotional may discover that this sensitivity allows them to understand others on a deep level. The stubborn child may find that their defiance was actually the seed of strength and freedom. The thing you were once ashamed of may be the key to your unique power, but the process of integration is not easy. It's like reconnecting with an old friend you abandoned long ago. At first, there will be awkwardness, even resistance. You may want to look away, feel ashamed of the parts of you that are not so beautiful. But if you are patient, little by little, you'll see the shadow never wanted to destroy you. It only wanted to be heard, to be acknowledged. There are ways to have a dialogue with that darkness. Dreams are one of the most powerful. In dreams, the unconscious often speaks in symbols: a wild beast, a locked room, a mysterious enemy. Instead of dismissing them as nightmares, you can ask, what does this animal represent in me? What memory is hidden in that room? What fear is this enemy reflecting back? These seemingly strange images are mirrors, showing you your inner darkness. Creativity is another doorway. When you write, paint, or play music, you allow the unconscious to speak without being blocked by reason. A short poem might reveal a pain you never dared to voice. A painting might expose a longing you've hidden away. When you give the shadow a healthy outlet, it no longer needs to show up as sudden anger or toxic relationships just to be noticed. And most of all, awareness in everyday moments is key. When you feel an unusual anger, instead of blaming someone else, you can pause and ask, where is this really coming from? Does it remind me of something from the past? When you feel jealous, instead of pushing it down in shame, ask, what is this person showing me about the part of myself I have yet to live? By simply changing the question, you shift from rejection to listening. And from that listening, healing begins. Once you begin to integrate, you'll feel a strange sense of relief. You no longer need to hold yourself together so tightly to appear good or perfect. You can admit that you are sometimes selfish, sometimes fragile, sometimes wrong. But instead of feeling shame, you feel more human, more real. Because wholeness doesn't mean holding only the light. It means embracing both the light and the dark. And only that wholeness brings true freedom. Imagine a day when you're no longer afraid of rejection. You can speak your truth without hesitation. You make choices not for applause, but because they stir something deep within. You can smile at judgmental eyes, knowing that judgment doesn't define you. That's when you begin to live with inner freedom, the kind no one can take away. However, this journey is not something you complete once. Liberation and integration are ongoing. Each time you uncover a part of your shadow, you feel lighter, but new layers will always emerge. It's like peeling an onion. Tears may fall, but with each layer, you come closer to your truest essence. The deeper you go, the more real, strong, and fearless you become. Eventually, you'll come to a beautiful realization. The shadow is no longer your enemy, but your ally. It reminds you that you are not yet whole, keeping you humble. It urges you to explore buried potential. It teaches you empathy, because once you've seen your own darkness, you can understand others more deeply. Liberation through self-confrontation is not just a personal journey. When you embrace your own shadow, you become less judgmental of others. You realize that someone's anger, selfishness, or weakness might just be their own shadow trying to be heard. And instead of fighting them, you begin to understand them. The integration within you becomes compassion outwardly. In the end, you'll see clearly. Liberation is not about eliminating darkness, but about realizing that it too is part of the light. When you integrate, you become whole. And from that wholeness, you step into the next layer of the journey. The discovery of archetypes, the ancient inner patterns that still shape your soul. These forces don't just influence you personally, they connect you to all of humanity. And when you begin to understand them, you will know you are not alone on this path. Once you've dared to face your darkness and begun the process of integration, you may feel like you've already come a long way. But then, another truth reveals itself. Not everything inside you comes from childhood, from your family, or from personal experience. Some things arise from a much deeper source. These are patterns humanity has carried for thousands of years. They are called archetypes, ancient inner blueprints. Imagine that beneath the layer of personal consciousness lies a vast ocean we all share. A collective memory where stories, symbols, and images repeat themselves from generation to generation. You've heard of the mythical hero, the wise mentor, the innocent child, the dark villain. These figures appear in fairy tales, religions, literature, and even modern films. What's strange is how similar they are across all cultures. That's not coincidence. It's because they are archetypes imprinted deep within the collective unconscious. You might wonder, what do these characters have to do with me? The answer is, more than you think. Because they don't just exist out there, they live within you. They shape your choices, your inner conflicts, your hidden desires. Every time you face a challenge, the voice of the hero rises in you. Every time you seek guidance, you long for the presence of the mentor. When you're tempted or overcome with fear, the shadow shows its face. And sometimes, you feel like the innocent child, longing for safety and love. Think back to a time in your life that felt like a battle. Maybe it was when you changed careers, ended a relationship, or faced deep loss. A part of you wanted to give up, but another part pushed you to keep going, to be braver, stronger, more determined. That was the hero archetype awakening in you. But remember, in every hero's story, there is always a monster to face. And within you, the hero must confront their own inner shadow to truly grow. This shadow is no longer just personal. It carries collective power. It may show up as irrational fears, unexplained anger, or desires you thought didn't belong to you. In myths, the hero slays the dragon or defeats the beast. In real life, you must face your own fears and limitations. Only then does the hero truly evolve. Perhaps you've lived this moment before, when you knew you had to make a change, but a powerful resistance held you back. You wanted to leave a stifling job, but fear of failure made you stay. You wanted to speak your truth, but fear of judgment silenced you. This is the battle between hero and shadow within you. No one can fight it for you. And most importantly, you cannot destroy the shadow. Only integrate it, learn from it, and let it become a stepping stone to maturity. But the hero and the shadow are only part of the story. Other archetypes are also alive in you, waiting to be seen. For example, the archetype of the mother appears in how you care for others, protect them, or long to be nurtured. The father archetype shows up in your sense of discipline, structure, or the pressure you put on yourself. The trickster appears when you rebel, break rules, or sabotage your own progress. These archetypes are not fixed. They take turns appearing during different phases of your life, shaping the way you act and feel. You might be the hero by day, fighting for your career, then become the child at night, longing for comfort. You might be the mentor in one relationship and the shadow in another. Recognizing them helps you understand yourself more deeply, instead of being unknowingly carried by their influence. One of the most fascinating archetypes is Anima and Animus, the feminine energy in men and the masculine energy in women. These have nothing to do with biological gender, but everything to do with inner balance. If you're a man, your Anima is expressed in your sensitivity, intuition, and softness. If you're a woman, your Animus is found in your decisiveness, logic, and strength. When one is denied, you feel imbalanced. A man who rejects his Anima may become emotionally rigid and disconnected. A woman who rejects her Animus may struggle with self-confidence and fear speaking up. But when both are embraced, you become a more complete human being, capable of compassion and action. In truth, archetypes don't just live in your mind. They're reflected in the world around you. They appear in the people you admire, the ones who trigger you, the fictional characters who leave lasting impressions. Maybe you're moved by a hero's sacrifice in a film, because the hero in you longs to live with such courage. Maybe you despise a villain, because your shadow has been stirred. And maybe you feel at peace reading about a gentle character, because your innocent child longs to be loved. Recognizing the archetypes within you is a vital step, because it shows you that you are not alone. What you're going through is not only yours, it's part of a story that humanity has lived over and over again. And there's something deeply comforting about that. You are not the first to face the dark. You are not the only one searching for yourself. Others before you, and all around you, are living different versions of the same journey. When you realize this, you begin to connect not just with yourself, but with others, with history, with the greater human experience. You understand that individuation is not about separation. It's about integration with something far larger than the small self. And this is just the beginning. Because beyond the archetypes lies an even deeper harmony, the inner rhythm between Anima and Animus, between the masculine and feminine within. When these forces are in balance, you'll begin to feel the wholeness you've been searching for all along. On the journey of finding yourself, there's a discovery that surprises many. Within every man is a feminine side, and within every woman is a masculine side. Jung called them Anima and Animus. It might sound unfamiliar, but if you pay attention, you'll notice this truth playing out in everyday life. Think of a man you once knew. He's strong, decisive, always logical. He may be successful at work, but when it comes to emotions, he's unsure. He struggles to express love, to allow himself to cry, to admit that he needs comfort. This is a man who has rejected his anima, the feminine aspect that represents softness, intuition, and emotional connection. He becomes rigid, and sometimes behind all that strength, there is a loneliness no one can touch. Now think of a woman. She is gentle, empathetic, always caring for others. But when it comes to making important decisions for her life, she hesitates. When she needs to say no, she stays silent. When she wants to assert herself, she worries she'll seem too harsh. This is a woman who has denied her animus, the masculine aspect that symbolizes reason, assertiveness, and the power to act. She lives more for others than for herself, and beneath her kindness lies a quiet exhaustion. Anima and animus have nothing to do with biological gender. They are two poles of energy within every person. Anima brings creativity, intuition, and connection with the unconscious. Animus brings logic, structure, and the ability to bring dreams to life. When one is repressed, we become imbalanced. But when both are acknowledged and integrated, we become whole. You can picture it like this. Anima is a flowing river, full of life and inspiration. Animus is the solid riverbank, guiding the flow and keeping it from spilling everywhere. A river is only beautiful when it has both water and a shore. Without water, the land is dry. Without boundaries, the water becomes a flood. Humans are the same. We need softness and strength, intuition and logic, the ability to dream and the power to make it real. But because of society, education, and cultural expectations, we are often only allowed to live one half. Men are told to be strong, not to cry, not to show weakness. Women are told to be gentle, to sacrifice, not to be too ambitious. So half of the soul is forgotten. But forgotten doesn't mean gone. What is denied slips into the shadow, and from there, it creates inner conflict. A man who suppresses emotion may lash out in anger because he doesn't know how to express his pain. A woman who suppresses her power may become bitter and resentful, never having lived for herself. So how do we restore balance? The first step is recognition. Realize that both energies exist within you. That when you, as a man, feel moved by music, it's not weakness, it's your anima speaking. That when you, as a woman, feel the urge to stand up for your truth, it's not selfish, it's your animus asking to be seen. When you stop judging, you begin to allow both sides to exist. The next step is integration. A man can begin by noticing his smallest emotions during the day, instead of brushing them aside. He can learn to say, "Today I feel tired. I need rest," instead of forcing himself to prove something. He can allow tears to fall, not because he's weak, but because that's the truth of his soul. A woman, on the other hand, can practice saying no when needed. She can set boundaries, make decisions for herself. She can begin to trust in her innate strength instead of waiting to be led. When anima and animus are accepted, wholeness begins to emerge. The man becomes not only strong, but also compassionate. He is both rational and intuitive. He can be a pillar of support, but also open enough to be supported. The woman becomes not only nurturing, but also bold. She has a heart that loves and a mind that leads. She can care for others, but also knows how to care for herself. This balance doesn't just help you live more authentically. It transforms how you connect with others. A man who listens to emotion becomes more present in love. A woman who expresses her strength becomes more equal in relationships. And when both learn to accept what was once denied, they can meet each other not from a place of lack, but from a place of wholeness. You can imagine this wholeness as a dance. In that dance, sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, sometimes you're strong, sometimes you're soft. And it's that fluidity that brings the dance to life. Humans are no different. When you integrate anima and animus, you become both the dancer and the rhythm. You are both the initiator and the receiver, the creator and the doer. The key is, this journey isn't about becoming someone else. It's about realizing you've always been enough. You don't need to search for the missing part outside yourself. A man doesn't need to depend on a woman to access emotion. A woman doesn't need to depend on a man to feel secure. Because within each of us, those parts have always been there, simply waiting to be awakened. When you recognize and integrate both poles, you begin to live as a whole human being. And from that wholeness, you can step into the final stage, breaking through the greatest illusion of all, the illusion that the ego is a fixed identity. Because the truth runs deeper. The self you think you know is just a fragment, just the surface. Behind it lies something much greater, a being that transcends all labels and limits. And when you touch that, you'll understand. You were never truly lost. You've always been part of the self, the whole. After everything you've gone through, removing the mask, facing the shadow, identifying the archetypes, and integrating the dual energies of Anima and Animus, you might think the journey is complete. But there is one final illusion still lingering. An illusion so subtle, so deeply embedded, that most of us take it as absolute truth. It is the illusion of a fixed self. From a young age, you were taught that you are a single, separate identity, with a name, a body, memories, a past, and personal experiences. You believed this, I was constant, that it defined you from birth until death. You clung to labels. I am this kind of person. I do this kind of work. I have this kind of personality. And you thought, this is all of me. But what if that's just another costume? Another role in a much bigger play? Take a moment to look back at who you were 10 years ago. Are you the same person now as you were then? Do your dreams, your fears, your beliefs remain unchanged? If you've changed so much in just a few years, is it fair to believe that the self is unchanging? Perhaps you have always been a river, flowing, shifting, never fixed in one form. Jung emphasized that the self we commonly refer to, the ego, is only a tiny fragment, a piece of a much greater whole. Behind it lies the self, the wholeness. The self is not bound by labels, not limited by the past or social roles. It is the union of every part of you, light and dark, masculine and feminine, personal and collective. The self is both the origin and the destination, both deep stillness and boundless vitality. But the trap of the ego is that it keeps whispering, this is who I am. I'm just like this. I can't be otherwise. And this belief keeps you stuck inside narrow definitions. You call yourself shy, so you avoid opportunities to step forward. You call yourself strong, so you never allow yourself to be soft. You call yourself kind, so you bury negative emotions even when they suffocate you. Every one of those labels, no matter how positive, becomes a silent prison. So how do you break this illusion? The first step is accepting that you are not only what you think of yourself. You are bigger than memory, bigger than profession, bigger than role. You are not just a father, a mother, an employee, a failure, or a success. These titles are temporary. They are costumes you wear for a time. But behind them all, there is a deeper you, the witness, the experiencer, the one quietly observing all the rises and falls. The next step is learning to let go. Letting go does not mean giving up on life, but letting go of total identification with roles and labels. When you no longer cling to the idea of, I must be this, I can't be that, you create space for transformation. You allow yourself to be soft, to be reborn, to experiment, to step beyond the frame. You become like a river, able to bend and move with the landscape, yet always true to itself. Think back to times of great change, a loss, a new beginning. Didn't it feel like an old version of you had to die, and a new one was born? In those moments, you caught a glimpse of a deeper truth. You were never a fixed being, but a living process. And through that process, you move closer to the self. One way to begin breaking the illusion is to listen to the unconscious, through dreams, intuition, and the strange synchronicities that appear in life. When you dream of the same symbol over and over, it's not just coincidence. It's a message from the deeper parts of you. When someone or something shows up exactly when you need it, it's not just luck. It's a sign from an invisible order. These moments remind you that you're not a separate fragment, but part of a much larger web of existence. Above all, embrace the not knowing. The ego always wants certainty, control, answers, but the self can only be found in openness to the unknown. When you sit in silence, breathe deeply, and simply let everything be, without judgment, you begin to feel a wider presence around you. That is the self, the wholeness you've always belonged to. There is a truth that feels both frightening and freeing. You were never truly lost. The self was never far. It has never abandoned you. It was only covered up by masks, by shadows, by names and roles. As you peel away each layer, you realize the self has always been there, waiting for you to return. And when you touch it, you understand that your life never truly began or ended in any role. It was always far greater than that. And at that moment, a familiar phrase rises once more, no longer as a concept, but as something you feel in every heartbeat. Life really does not begin until you find yourself. You can continue living as a fragment, clinging to a small familiar self, or you can step into the uncertainty and discover your wholeness. The choice is always there. The question is, are you brave enough to let go of familiar illusions and step into the infinite space of the self, where real life begins? You know, everything you've been seeking, happiness, love, purpose, has never been out there. It has never lived in the eyes of others, in titles, or in society's approval. It has always been here, within you. And the journey you've taken isn't about becoming someone new. It's the path back to who you've always been. Remember, you no longer have to be perfect. You only have to be real. You no longer have to run. You only have to come home. Because life truly only begins when you find yourself. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.